Hey Nerdgenic Nation, and welcome to History Of. I'm your host and resident superhero nerd, Aaron Waller, and this is the series where we do a deep dive into various comic book characters, both heroes and villains, and give a little bit more insight as to who they are and why they do what they do. And in today's video, we're talking about a Marvel villain that has some pretty unique powers, and it's actually about to get even more thrust into the spotlight, if you will, and that's the Spot. The Spot was created by Al Milgrom and Herb Trimpe and first appeared in Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man number 98 in 1985. Real name Jonathan Ohn, O-H-N-N, he was actually a doctor and got his doctorate at MIT, and even roomed with Mysterio, or as he was known then, Quentin Beck. Ohn would eventually start working for Kingpin and assigned to reproduce radiation levels similar to that of the hero Cloak and try to recreate his powers. He would succeed in creating a circular black portal, but end up causing a citywide blackout, into which he stepped into the portal for fear of losing it as it was destabilizing. He would pass out and find himself floating in a totally different dimension, half in darkness and half in light, with an endless number of portals. When he emerged, however, he found that the portals had fused to his skin, bleaching it and covering him in black spots from head to toe. When Spider-Man and Black Cat came to confront Kingpin, he emerged and named himself the Spot. He was able to win their first altercation, but during their second battle, Spider-Man would get the upper hand. Later, he would form a short-lived villain team called the Spider-Man Revenge Squad, and then later be forced to work for the Gideon Trust and open a portal to the Negative Zone. Thankfully though, the Fantastic Four were there as they happened to be trapped in the Negative Zone and thus were able to thwart the plan. He would then go on to help Tombstone escape prison and be thanked by Tombstone snapping his neck. I think I would have just preferred a card or something. He would resurface years later and be resurrected by Hydra and the Hand, who were working together to bring down S.H.I.E.L.D., but he would later be killed once again by Wolverine. He would then later once again resurface on a team assembled by MODOK before being entrapped in his own anti-dimension by the Mandarin. And because he didn't know which dimension from which he entered because he did so of his own volition, he was stuck and could only project his image back into the real world and be able to deliver a note of dots to his son, which he would eventually translate to being Treasure Island, a book that he used to read to him. Later he would be recruited by Mr. Negative, who promised to help find him a cure if he worked for him. He would eventually then get caught up in a kidnapping scheme led by Doc Ock, defeated and turned in by Spider-Man. The Spot would also go on to fight Daredevil, but proved to be no match before being captured by Kingpin and experimented on to amplify his powers and harness the dark dimension that he could access. He was later attacked in a lab by Carnage. Spot attempted to plead for his life, but Carnage refused to oblige and tried to evade his attacks. With the villain the Artist assisting Carnage, he would be able to distract him long enough that Carnage could predict which portal he would emerge from, and then essentially rip him apart and subsequently absorb the remains of his powers. Owen's disembodied head, however, would claim to return from within the spotted dimension eventually. Very Deadpool-esque, no? The Spot has been seen outside of comics, though very rarely, such as in the 90s Spider-Man the Animated Series where he was voiced by Oliver Moorhead, as well as in the 2017 Spider-Man show where he was voiced by Crispin Freeman. He will soon, however, be even more in the spotlight, no pun intended, in the highly anticipated sequel Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, where he'll be voiced by Jason Schwartzman. Now, I've kind of hinted as to what the Spot can do in terms of powers and abilities, but let's dive into it a little bit further. Essentially, he has access to the spotted dimension, and his skin is dotted with warps in space. The Spots can transport things, people, or pretty much anything to another area by way of passing through the spotted dimension and coming out of another spot. The Spot can also teleport himself or extend parts of his own body through various distances as defined by his spots. He also has the ability to move the spots all around his body or even take them off and just place them somewhere. And he also seems to possess some kind of form of immortality, being capable of speech even after having been decapitated, and if his physical body is fatally wounded, it will disintegrate and reconstitute itself within the spotted dimension. So who's to say whether or not he's actually immortal, but let's go ahead and move on to my favorite segment here on History Of, the recommended reading, where I give you some comics where I recommend that you go and check out to learn a little bit more about this character, as well as see him in action. First up, we have Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man number 98. This is where he was first introduced, and honestly he gets a pretty good amount of page time for a few issues, so definitely worth checking out this one. Up next, I would recommend the Fantastic Four Volume 3, number 38 to 44. This is where he was being used a lot, but it also involves heroes other than Spider-Man, so it's nice to mix things up every so often. Then we have Daredevil Volume 3, number 20 and 21. This is an interesting read as he thinks he can outsmart Daredevil given a perceived advantage, but it is also an awesome book just to see again the villain fight someone else. And finally, finally we have Carnage Volume 3, number 2 and 3. I mean, not a ton is happening in this little arc, but if you want to see the Deadpool thing that I was talking about earlier, here's your go-to. So those are some of the major things you need to know about the Spot. Was there anything in this video you may not have known otherwise? Let me know down in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, be sure to leave me a suggestion as to who you think I should add onto this History of series. Your suggestion just might become next week's video. But also while you're down there, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell notification so you don't miss out on any future videos from me or the rest of the Nerdgenic team. But in the meantime, if you want even more video content from us, be sure to check out these videos on screen. Like my biggest question for the upcoming Across the Spider-Verse movie right over here, or be sure to check out more characters on the History of playlist. Some also might be appearing in the sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, so be sure to check out that playlist right over here. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. We really do appreciate it, and we hope to see you in the next video.